Hundreds killed in days, bodies piled up in the streets, families hiding in basements, and houses burned to ash. How did local clashes in Syria's Sweida governorate escalate into days of back-and-forth massacres and an Israeli bombing campaign? Fighting began when a Druze merchant was kidnapped by Bedouin groups. Both Druze and Bedouin have lived in Sweida for years and have had past conflicts over land ownership and smuggling routes into neighboring countries. The Druze are roughly 3% of Syria's population, a minority in the country, but the majority of Sweida's population. As the civil war raged, much of the Druze community formed militias to protect themselves, but largely stayed out of the fighting, keeping Sweida fairly independent. But since the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government, the Druze community has been split on the new government of Ahmed al-Sharaa, a former Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, fighter. Some Druze spiritual leaders supported a cooperative approach to the new government, such as Sheikh Yusuf Sharbu and Hamoud al-Hinawi. But one prominent cleric, Hikmat al-Hijri, has taken a harder line, demanding more extensive rights for the Druze in the new constitution and refusing to lay down arms. And the past few months have only made him more popular. The role of government-aligned forces in the massacres of Alawi communities earlier this year deeply worried the Druze minority. Determined to prevent the same from happening to them, more Druze were convinced to remain armed rather than integrating into Syria's state institutions. Hijri has also welcomed ongoing Israeli intervention in southern Syria as leverage against the new government. Since Assad's fall, Israel has seized more territory along the occupied Golan Heights, conducted raids and airstrikes in nearby Daraa and Quneitra, and demanded that southern Syria be a demilitarized buffer zone to limit the capacity of Syria's new government. So everyone wanted different things in southern Syria. Israel wanted greater control, some Druze wanted the de facto autonomy they had under Assad, while others wanted closer integration, and Sharaa wanted to finally assert government over the south after months of Israeli attacks and tensions with Druze militias. All these tensions came to the surface after the kidnapping of that Druze merchant led to rounds of hostage-taking between Druze and Bedouin groups, which then led to armed clashes that spiraled into full-scale attacks on villages. Sharaa then sent forces to Sweida, hoping that by using his security forces to restore order, he could weaken the Druze militias and show Israel had no excuse for intervention. But Druze gunmen ambushed and executed government forces, while Israel bombed their convoys. So Sharaa sent in hardline reinforcements, some of them foreign fighters with extremist pasts, while Bedouin tribes mobilized from around the country to join the fight. Soon, pro-Sharaa forces were committing atrocities against Druze communities. Seizing on this chaos, Israel heavily bombed state military targets in Sweida, as well as in Syria's capital, Damascus, to force them to retreat. While Syria's Druze felt unsafe, many thought Israel's attacks would only escalate the situation rather than protect them. The ensuing violence lasted several days. All sides committed horrific atrocities, kidnappings, massacres, looting, torture, arson, and more. Sharaa repeatedly tried to conclude ceasefires, only for Hijri to claim his forces had broken them and withdraw from the agreements. Eventually, Syrian security forces formed roadblocks to stop Bedouin tribes from entering Sweida to fight, and helped evacuate Bedouins and Christians out of Sweida. But by that point, the damage was done. The atrocities had seriously undermined the government's legitimacy among the Druze. Previously hoping the government would restore order, many now saw them as effectively helping the Bedouin enact sectarian revenge. This perception grew after Sharaa's speech appeared extremely sympathetic to the Bedouins.
إننا إذ نشكر العشائر على مواقفها البطولية، لكننا ندعوها للالتزام التام بإيقاف إطلاق النار.
This is now the second time Sharaa has sent forces to put an end to local unrest, only for them to be implicated in sectarian massacres against minorities. The extent of his responsibility is still being debated, but it is clear that he is struggling to contain pressure from his base, whether radical fighters in his army or the tribes fighting alongside them. Sharaa figures it is better to control them within his armed forces than let them roam free. But sending unprofessional, poorly disciplined forces into delicate sectarian conflicts has repeatedly proven to be a disaster. After 1,500 Bedouins were forced out of their homes, they were angry at Sharaa for blocking them from taking revenge against the Druze. On the other side, Druze leaders will now want even greater guarantees of communal autonomy, rather than integrating into Syria's state. The same is true for Syria's Kurdish forces. Despite optimism earlier this year, talks have stalled as the Kurds have now doubled down on their demands to keep their weapons. If Sharaa cannot seriously professionalize his armed forces or ensure accountability, minorities will be reluctant to accept the state's authority, and the cycles of revenge-taking will continue to spiral into massacres. Sharaa's new government risks being seen not as Syria's national authority, but a violent remnant of the radical militias from which he came.